The Bad Batch returned in today's episode, Bad Territory, and there was a lot to love about it. It was able to move the larger story forward while still taking the time to focus in on Hunter and Wrecker. I had made a note in my last review of how it really felt like they were being sidelined, with Crosshair and Omega getting the majority of things to do, and while we didn't completely move away from them in this episode, Hunter and Wrecker really got the spotlight. It was a good balance of storylines where we got to focus on two characters we haven't seen much of lately, but everyone still had a little something to do. Diving straight into the episode, once again Echo is gone. It's unclear how much time has passed between episodes, but it's recent enough where Omega still feels guilty over what happened because of the Empire hunting her. But I would have liked for at least Echo to stick around a little longer. I understand that he's not a part of the squad anymore, but he is still one of them, so it doesn't feel right how little he's shown up. Even with last week, all he does is drop them off and then pick them up. Fee contacts them, and it was amusing and also heartbreaking seeing how out of the loop Crosshair was. He missed so much time and so many missions. He doesn't know who Fee is, Fennec Shand, Gungi, or even that they all had a mission to Kashyyyk. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen anything like this before today, where Crosshair isn't caught up on everything that he's missed. Through Fee, they learn that Class 1 bounty hunters have been retrieving M-count targets for the Empire, and this is how Fennec Shand gets brought into the story. I had been wondering how they would bring her in seamlessly, and this does make sense, with the Batch looking for information. It doesn't feel forced, and it lets the character have one last episode before the show ends, assuming she doesn't appear again later this season. Nobody likes the idea of working with Fennec, they still don't trust her, but this had me a little bit confused. As far as I remember, she helped Omega escape last time from Cad Bane, but either I'm remembering that wrong, or none of the Batch know about that. Omega would have been the only one present to realize what Fennec was doing for her, but I guess it would have made sense that she would have never fully realized what was happening. Hunter and Wrecker decide to go alone, as they don't want Omega anywhere near Fennec, and in the meantime, he wants Omega to convince Crosshair to have his hand looked at, which doesn't seem to take too much effort because the next time we see him, AZ is treating his hand to the best of his ability. It isn't much, and AZ doesn't think the hand will ever heal completely, but he also mentions that it could be something other than physical damage. We don't know what Crosshair went through exactly on Tantus, and it could be such a painful memory that the PTSD of it all is what's causing his hand to shake. Later, when we see him practicing his shot, he continues to get upset with his misses, despite Omega trying to comfort him. He refuses to admit that it could be all in his head, but eventually he's going to have to confront his past and what he went through if he's going to get it healed. Omega even tries getting him to meditate, which he picked up from Gungi and the Wookiees. Although he doesn't like it, Crosshair does at least give it a shot, which shows how much Omega means to him, that he's willing to trust her with this. Seeing Omega meditate and open herself up to the world like this also reminded me of the theories that she's Force sensitive. Although it doesn't show much, she has the same calming demeanor to her. Jumping over back to the main storyline though, Hunter and Wrecker arrive at an orbital space station, and it felt like we've been here before in past episodes, but I couldn't remember anything offhand. I'll have to do some more digging on that later. I really enjoyed their initial confrontation with her, the environments of the cantina, how they all interact with each other, and just seeing her again voiced by Ming-Na Wen. Although she hasn't done an M-count target, Fennec knows somebody who has. My mind immediately went to Cad Bane, because we know he appears at some point this season. But her final conversation with the hologram on the ship has me thinking Ventress, which I would be willing to bet on. In exchange for the information though, Fennec wants their help to bring in Sylar Saris, the slayer of Ordo Eris, who took out a couple of top bosses for the Haxian brood. As they arrive on the Marsh planet, it quickly becomes evident that this is a much more dangerous bounty than it seemed at first, between the target himself and the environment. It's far from a paradise planet. I liked the inclusion of the boat. It really felt like we were just in a toxic version of the Florida Everglades or something. They run into some alligators, which honestly I wouldn't have thought much of if Fennec hadn't been so visibly concerned. There were a lot of them, but I wouldn't have expected for them to pose much of a threat to the group. But we do get to see Wrecker wrangle an alligator, which was fun. After the action, we get a slower moment of conversation between them all, as Fennec informs them all that she let Omega go after the bounty was called off, which I think was done more for her reputation than to try and make the Batch understand her more. This conversation also shows us the contrasting perspectives of a bounty hunter who's just out for the money, and former soldiers who are looking to settle down. The Bad Batch used to be like her, mercenaries looking for the next score, but raising Omega changed their values, and this moment showed how far they've come. Once they arrive at the hideout, Fennec sends the two of them out first, and it felt like she was playing some sort of game here, constantly sending them out into extremely dangerous conditions while she sits behind and does nothing. The action here was alright. Sylar was smaller than I expected, but it was hard to see any of it because of how darkly it was lit. Eventually they are able to capture him, and although Fennec doesn't have the information yet, Hunter and Wrecker choose to trust that she'll deliver. As she departs, Fennec pulls up a hologram of someone, asking about the M-count bounties. It sounds like the contact will be going after the clones, rather than through Fennec, but it's unclear whether it's to deliver the information personally, to investigate more, or to find Omega for the Empire. The muffled voice makes it impossible to tell who it is, but like I mentioned earlier, I really do think it's Ventress. From the trailers, we know both her and Bane still have to appear, and it would make more sense for this to be how she gets brought into the story. What did you think of this episode of The Bad Batch? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like the video, and subscribe for coverage of The Bad Batch as a new episode premieres every week, and remember to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you all for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you. Always.